The outpost was dying slowly. Not with explosions or alarms, but with quiet failures, the kind that crept in unnoticed until it was too late. Lights dimmed a little more each day. Heat recycled unevenly through the metal corridors. Consoles froze, rebooted, and came back with missing data. Outpost Ashen had been built to last 10 years. It had survived 12. That alone was considered a miracle. Outside, Caelus IX waited. The planet was a vast stretch of stone and dust, locked beneath a red, exhausted star. No oceans. No atmosphere worth naming. No sign that life had ever existed there. Officially, it was catalogued as irreversibly dead. A world beyond recovery. A place humanity studied not to save, but to understand how planets failed. Evacuation was scheduled in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, assuming the power held. Dr. Mira Solen stood alone in the medical bay, one hand braced against the cold steel counter, the other pressed against her abdomen. She had told herself the tightening was stress. Muscle fatigue. Dehydration. Anything but what it actually was. She inhaled slowly through her nose, counting. 1. 2. 3. The pain came again, sharper this time. No, she whispered, more annoyed than afraid. Not now. She activated the wall console with shaking fingers. The screen flickered before stabilizing, its light reflecting off her tired eyes. Mira had memorized these readouts years ago. She didn't need the system to tell her what was happening. She was in labor. The irony would have been laughable under different circumstances. A child, being born on a world where nothing lived. A baby arriving at the very edge of extinction. She tapped her comm. Medical to command, she said, forcing her voice to stay even. I need assistance. Now. Static answered first. Then a voice broke through, thin, delayed. Command here, said Commander Hale Varric. Say again, medical. Mira swallowed as another contraction rolled. I'm going into labor, she said. Earlier than expected. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. That's not possible, Varric said carefully. Your projected date. I know what the projection said, Mira replied, her jaw tightening. And I know what my body is doing. Get someone down here. The line crackled again. Understood. On the way. Mira leaned back against the counter, breathing through the pain. She had known this could happen. Pregnancy aboard a failing outpost was not in any medical handbook, but contingency plans existed for everything. Or so the mission designers liked to believe. Another contraction hit, and this time something else happened. The lights flickered. Not the usual flicker. Not the tired pulse of a dying generator. This was sudden. Sharp. The overhead panels dimmed, then flared brighter than they had in weeks. Mira looked up, startled. Power surge, she muttered. Before she could reach the console, an alarm chimed, soft, confused, as if uncertain it should even be sounding. The planetary monitor activated on its own. Mira's breath caught. The readout made no sense. Core temperature, rising. She stared at the numbers, waiting for them to correct themselves. Caelus IX's core had been stable for millions of years. Cold, inert, locked in geological death. It did not warm. It did not change. And yet, the graph climbed. Slowly, but undeniably. Her comm buzzed again. Medical, this is engineering, came a tense voice. Are you running diagnostics right now? Yes, Mira replied automatically. Why? We're seeing seismic readings, the engineer said. Minor tremors. Planet-wide. Nothing destructive, but rhythmic. Mira's eyes dropped to her abdomen as another contraction surged, stronger, perfectly timed. Her heart began to race. Define rhythmic, she said. There was a pause on the other end. Then, quieter, they're syncing with something. We don't know what. Mira didn't answer. She didn't need to. She activated the fetal monitor, hands moving on instinct now, training overriding fear. The soft, rapid beat filled the room, steady, alive, undeniable. At the same moment, the seismic graph pulsed. Beat. Pulse. Beat. Pulse. Mira felt cold spread through her chest, followed immediately by something warmer. Awe. Terror. Wonder. All tangled together. That's impossible, she whispered. Footsteps echoed in the corridor as medical staff rushed in, their faces tight with concern. They followed her gaze to the monitor, then to the planetary readout. One of them laughed nervously. That's a glitch, he said. Has to be. The outpost shuddered. Not violently. Not enough to throw anyone off their feet. Just a deep, deliberate vibration, like a breath taken by something enormous beneath the ground. The room fell silent. Somewhere deep within Caelus IX, stone shifted. The child was coming faster now. Mira barely registered the procedures, the voices guiding her, the cool instruments against her skin. Her world narrowed to breath and pressure and the growing certainty that something was terribly, impossibly wrong. And yet, it didn't feel hostile. The tremors continued. His eyes opened slowly, reflecting the soft glow of the monitors, and something else beneath it. A faint, shifting light, like distant horizons moving under stone. The planet's core temperature stabilized. The tremors ceased. Outpost Ashen stood quiet, whole, and inexplicably alive. Across every sensor array, one conclusion echoed silently through the data. For the first time in recorded history, the planet had reacted. Not to machines. Not to drilling or scans. But to birth. The changes didn't announce themselves with alarms or warnings. They arrived quietly, the way truth often does, subtle at first, almost easy to ignore. On the first morning after the birth, Mira woke to an unfamiliar sensation. The medical bay felt steady. Too steady. The faint vibration that had always lived in the walls of Outpost Ashen, the hum of overworked systems and failing generators, was gone. For a moment, she wondered if she'd lost her hearing. Then she looked at the monitors. Power output was stable. Not barely holding. Not fluctuating. Stable. That's not possible, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. A technician stood near the door, staring at his tablet like it might suddenly explain itself. We ran diagnostics 3 times, he said. Everything's green. Even the stuff that hasn't been green in months. Mira shifted slightly, careful not to disturb the baby resting against her chest. He slept without twitching, without fussing, his breathing slow and even. No cries. No startled movements. Just calm. Too calm. What about the planet? She asked. The technician hesitated. You should see it. They escorted her to the observation corridor later that day, wrapping the child in thermal fabric as a precaution. The corridor's outer window stretched wide, revealing Caelus IX in all its barren vastness. At first glance, it looked the same. Stone plains. Jagged ridges. Endless dust. Then Mira noticed the patterns. Massive slabs leaned at new angles, forming arcs instead of chaos. Those weren't like that yesterday, she said softly. No, Commander Varric replied from behind her. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was something underneath it. Unease. We confirmed it with time-lapse data. The movement was gradual. Almost intentional. Outside, dust storms gathered along the horizon. Caelus IX had always had storms, violent, random, destructive. These were different. They spiraled. Great, slow curves of dust turned inward, like galaxies forming on the planet's surface. The movement was graceful, almost hypnotic. Mira felt the baby stir slightly. At that exact moment, the gravity in the corridor shifted. Not enough to trigger alarms. Not enough to send people stumbling. Just a subtle lightness, like the instant before an elevator stops. An engineer cursed under his breath. Localized gravity fluctuation, he said. Centered right here. Here meant the child. Mira tightened her hold instinctively. He didn't do anything, she said, though she wasn't sure who she was defending him from. Varric exhaled slowly. I know, he said. But the planet might have. Back in the medical bay, the baby remained silent. He didn't cry when hungry. He didn't cry when startled. He didn't cry at all. He simply opened his eyes and looked, at faces, at lights, at the empty air, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Mira began to notice something else, too. When she touched him, truly touched him, skin to skin, no gloves, no barriers, she felt echoes. The first time it happened, she nearly dropped him. She had been adjusting the thermal wrap when a wave of sensation flooded her mind. Not thoughts. Not images in the usual sense. Memories. Vast, endless blue. An ocean stretched to every horizon, warm and alive, its surface shimmering under a younger, brighter star. She could feel the water moving, tides pulling against continents that no longer existed. Mira gasped, clutching the edge of the bed. The vision vanished instantly. Her heart pounded as she looked down at the baby. He stared back at her, unblinking, calm. That wasn't mine, she whispered. She tried to rationalize it. Stress hallucinations. Postpartum shock. Fatigue layered on fear. But the memories kept coming. Later that day, when she held him again, the ocean returned, only this time, it was gone. She felt heat. Pressure. A terrible, grinding collapse. Cities of crystal, impossibly tall, refracting light into colors she didn't have names for, shattered beneath tectonic force. Towers fell slowly, beautifully, like they were bowing rather than breaking. There was no panic in the memory. Only grief. Deep, enduring grief. Mira's knees buckled, and she sank onto the bed, breath shaking. She wasn't seeing this. She was remembering it. And she had never lived it. The medical staff noticed her growing silence. Varric noticed her hands trembling when she held the child. Eventually, someone asked the question out loud. What's happening to you, doctor? Mira hesitated. Then she answered honestly. When I touch him, she said, I feel things. Places. Events. Not imagined ones. Real ones. Varric frowned. You're saying the child is transmitting memories? Yes, she replied quietly. Not deliberately. Not like communication. More like, leakage. And whose memories are they? Mira looked at the viewport again, at the vast stone world beyond the glass. At the dust spirals turning patiently across the plains. The planets, she said. Seismic reports continue to change. Not spikes. Not disasters. Adjustments. The crust flexed subtly, like muscles waking after a long sleep. Deep beneath the surface, ancient layers warmed and shifted. Caelus IX was not becoming violent. It was becoming responsive. She pressed her forehead gently to his. This time, the memory came slowly. A long waiting. Eons of silence beneath cooling stone. Awareness fading, not dying. Holding on to the idea of existence with no voice to express it. No way to reach out. Waiting for something that could feel. Something that could remember. Mira's eyes filled with tears. You were alone, she whispered. The baby blinked. Outside, the dust storm softened. The planet's gravity settled into a new equilibrium. For the first time since anyone had been monitoring it, Caelus IX behaved less like an object, and more like a being drawing breath. The planet was not waking suddenly. It was remembering itself. And through the child in Mira's arms, it was finally no longer alone. The answers did not come all at once. They arrived in fragments, quiet, patient pieces, like the planet itself was deciding how much truth Mira was ready to hold. It began with the scans. Mira stood in the geology lab long past the end of her shift, the baby resting in a cradle beside her workstation. The room was dim except for the glow of layered holograms hovering in the air. Cross-sections of Caelus IX rotated slowly, revealing depth after depth of stone, pressure, and ancient scars. At first, she thought the anomaly was a rendering error. The mineral density patterns didn't repeat the way dead planets should. They branched. They connected. They formed loops. She leaned closer, adjusting the scale. "That's not random," she murmured. "What isn't?" Commander Varric asked, stepping into the lab. His voice echoed softly against the metal walls. "These structures," Mira said, gesturing at the display. "They're too organized. Too symmetrical. I've been looking at planetary crusts my entire career. This isn't erosion. This isn't compression." Varric folded his arms. "Then what is it?" Mira hesitated. Saying it out loud felt dangerous. Absurd. "They look like neural pathways." The word hung in the air between them. "Neural," Varric repeated slowly. "As in, a brain." "Not a brain," Mira said quickly. "Not like ours. But something analogous. A lattice. A network designed to transmit, store, and process information." She expanded the scan, isolating the structures. They stretched for thousands of kilometers beneath the surface, branching and reconnecting in patterns too deliberate to dismiss. "This planet wasn't lifeless," she continued, her voice steadier now. "It was thinking." Varric exhaled through his nose. "You're telling me we built an outpost on top of a mind?" "Yes," Mira said quietly. "A dormant one." Further analysis confirmed it. The mineral composition was unlike anything in known planetary geology, crystalline matrices capable of holding energy states for millennia. Not machines. Not biology. Something in between. Caelus IX had suffered a catastrophic stellar event millions of years ago. Radiation. Gravitational shock. The kind of trauma that sterilized surfaces and boiled oceans away. It should have died. Instead, it adapted. It went into hibernation, Mira explained later, addressing a small group of senior staff. Shut down external systems. Preserved what mattered underground. "Why?" one of the engineers asked. "Why hold on at all?" Mira glanced at the cradle nearby. "Because it wasn't finished," she said. "Because it remembered being alive." The realization settled slowly, heavily. The child was not an anomaly. Not a fluke of radiation or human biology pushed too far. He was deliberate. "He's a mechanism," Varric said one evening, standing beside Mira as she rocked the baby gently. "A fail-safe." "Yes," she replied. "But not a weapon. Not a tool. A translation." The memories became clearer after that. When Mira touched the child now, the sensations came with context. Understanding layered onto feeling. She saw the moment Caelus IX realized it could no longer sustain itself in isolation. Felt the slow decision form, not panic, not desperation, but resolve. The planet needed a way to interact with the universe again. And stone alone could not speak. "So you shaped yourself into something that could," Mira whispered, brushing her thumb gently over the child's hand. He curled his fingers around hers. The planet had observed humanity for centuries. Their probes. Their transient colonies. Their habit of arriving, studying, and leaving. Humans did not stay forever. But they carried stories. They leave, Mira said softly to Varric later, repeating the thought that echoed through the memories. But they also remember. That was why the form mattered. A human body could move through space. Could be held. Could speak, learn, grow. Could take memories beyond the gravity well of a single dying world. The child was not Caelus IX reborn. He was Caelus IX translated. Understanding that changed everything, and nothing. The outpost staff reacted the way humans always did when faced with the impossible. Some denied it. Some feared it. Some stared at the child with something close to reverence. But Mira felt something else. Responsibility. Late one night, alone again, she activated a deep core scan while holding the baby against her shoulder. The neural lattices pulsed faintly in response, like distant stars blinking awake. "You trusted us," she whispered. "You trusted me." A memory answered her. Not in words. In feeling. The planet had searched for many forms before choosing this one. Countless possibilities discarded. Too fragile. Too rigid. Too fleeting. Humans were imperfect. But they were adaptable. And they loved fiercely, even when it hurt. Mira felt tears slide down her cheeks. "You knew I'd protect him," she said. "Didn't you?" The child stirred, his warmth steady against her skin. Outside, Caelus IX shifted gently, adjusting its ancient bones. For the first time since the truth emerged, Mira allowed herself to say it aloud. "This world isn't dead," she said softly. "It never was." Varric nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Then the question isn't what this planet is." He looked at the child. "It's what we're going to do now that it's awake." Mira didn't answer right away. She looked down at the small, impossible life in her arms, at the human face holding the memory of oceans and cities, waiting patiently for the future to decide what it would become. And somewhere deep beneath them, Caelus IX listened. Not as stone. But as something that had chosen to live again. Commander Varric waited until the child was asleep before making the call. The decision wasn't written in any protocol, but it felt necessary. Some instinct, human, not military, told him that certain conversations should not happen in the presence of something that could feel them. The transmission to Earth took nearly 9 minutes to align. During that time, Varric stood alone in the command chamber, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the slow rotation of Caelus IX on the central display. A living world. Even thinking the words felt dangerous. The signal connected with a sharp tone. "Earth command receiving," a voice said. Calm. Neutral. Distant in every possible way. "Proceed, Outpost Ashen." Varric didn't waste time. "We have confirmation," he said. Caelus IX is not a dead planet. It contains a planet-scale neural lattice. Conscious. Dormant until recently. A pause followed. Not surprise. Calculation. "And the cause of reactivation?" the voice asked. Varric closed his eyes briefly. "A child," he said. "Human-born. But not entirely human." The silence that followed was longer this time. When the response came, it was colder than vacuum. "Understood," Earth Command said. "Begin containment procedures immediately." Varric swallowed. "Containment?" "Terminate the organism," the voice replied. "Sterilize the planet's surface. Neural structures must be neutralized." "You're talking about killing a child," Varric said quietly. "We're talking about eliminating a strategic risk," Earth Command corrected. "A conscious planetary intelligence represents an uncontrollable variable. If it spreads, if others learn to replicate it, entire star systems become unstable. Varric felt something tighten in his chest. It hasn't shown hostility. That is irrelevant, the voice said. Awareness equals unpredictability. Unpredictability equals threat. The order appeared on his console moments later. Clear. Absolute. Terminate. Sterilize. Erase. Varric disconnected without another word. The room felt colder afterward. Elsewhere in the outpost, Mira felt the moment Earth made its decision. She was standing in the medical bay, gently rocking the child, when the air changed. Not the temperature, the pressure. Like a held breath stretched too long. The walls shuddered. Not violently. Not yet. Just enough to be felt. Mira, Varric's voice came over the comm, strained. We need to talk. Now. She knew before he said anything. By the time she reached the command chamber, the outpost had already begun to change. Doors sealed behind her with unfamiliar efficiency. Bulkheads thickened, metal flowing like wax reinforced by stone. Corridors subtly rerouted, guiding her path without her realizing it. The planet was listening. Varric stood at the center of the room, the Earth command order glowing on the display between them. Mira read it once. Then again. Her hands tightened around the child. They're afraid, she said quietly. Yes, Varric replied. And fear makes decisions very simple. You're not going to do this, Mira said. It wasn't a question. Varric didn't answer immediately. As if in response to the silence, the outpost shifted again. Stone pushed through metal seams, forming curved barriers along the outer hull. External scanners lit up with alerts as the planet's surface hardened, reshaping itself into layered shields. Defensive. Protective. The planet is choosing, Varric said softly. It's choosing the child. Mira felt the truth of that statement resonate through her bones. When she touched the baby's forehead, memories flared, fear this time. Not panic. Not rage. Fear of loss. They want to kill him, Mira whispered. The child stirred, his small hand gripping her sleeve. Gravity fluctuated gently around them, like a warning, not a threat. Varric stepped closer. Mira, he said carefully, you're a scientist. You understand the scale of this. A sentient planet could rewrite the balance of power in the galaxy. I know, she said. And I also know what this is. She looked down at the child. He's not a weapon, she continued. He's a life. A choice made by something that didn't want to disappear. Outside, seismic activity increased, not chaotic, but purposeful. Stone rose from the plains around the outpost, forming natural ramparts. Communication arrays flickered as the planet subtly interfered with outbound signals. Earth was being shut out. They'll send others, Varric said. Ships. Weapons. Mira met his eyes. Then you have to decide who you are before they arrive. He flinched at that. Scientist, Mira said, her voice steady but thick with emotion, or executioner. Varric turned away, staring at the display of Caelus IX. At the living patterns beneath its surface. At the undeniable truth staring back at him. I swore to protect humanity, he said quietly. And I swore to understand life, Mira replied. Even when it doesn't look like us. The planet trembled again, stronger this time. Not violent, but firm. A boundary being drawn. Alarms chimed as launch systems locked themselves down. The outpost was no longer responding to human override commands alone. Caelus IX was asserting itself. Varric let out a long breath. If I disobey this order, he said, I lose everything. Mira didn't hesitate. So did the planet, she said. And it chose to keep going anyway. The child opened his eyes. For the first time, he made a sound, not a cry, but a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the chamber. The walls responded, stone and metal aligning as one. The outpost sealed completely. Earth command signal went dead. In the sudden quiet, Varric made his choice. He powered down the termination sequence. Outside, Caelus IX settled, not in triumph, but in relief. Mira felt tears slide down her cheeks as she held the child closer. Scientist or mother? Protector or destroyer? On a world that should not have been alive, humanity had reached the moment where fear demanded obedience. And compassion demanded courage. The planet waited. And for the first time, so did humanity. The truth came to Mira the way gravity does. Not suddenly. Not loudly. Just undeniable. She stood alone in the observation chamber, the child asleep against her chest, watching Caelus IX shift beneath the thin veil of its forming atmosphere. The planet's movements had slowed. Not stopped, settled. Like a body finding a position where the pain was finally manageable. The data scrolled quietly beside her. Core temperature. Neural lattice coherence. Energy flow between surface and deep crust. One pattern stood out. One terrible, perfect pattern. Mira's fingers hovered over the display as understanding locked into place. If you leave, she whispered. The planet answered her, not in words, but in sensation. A weakening. A hollowing. She saw it clearly now. The child was not just connected to Caelus IX. He was anchored to it. His presence stabilized the neural lattice. His proximity allowed the planet to regulate itself, to heal without tearing itself apart. If he left the gravity well, the lattice would collapse. The planet would finally, completely, die. Mira closed her eyes, her breath catching in her throat. And if you stay, she said softly, looking down at the child, you'll never really be human. He stirred slightly, his small hand tightening in the fabric of her sleeve. His heartbeat was steady, but she felt the other rhythm beneath it, the deep, ancient pulse of Caelus IX, slow and patient. He would grow here. He would learn. But he would never walk beneath Earth's sky. Never hear rain fall on leaves. Never sit in a crowded room and feel anonymous. Never be only a person. He would always be more. And less. Footsteps echoed behind her. Varric stopped a respectful distance away. The evacuation window closes in 3 hours, he said quietly. Earth Command has rerouted a patrol vessel. Once it arrives, I won't be able to protect you. Mira nodded. I know. He hesitated. You don't have to do this alone. She turned to face him, her eyes tired but clear. Yes, she said gently. I do. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of it pressing down harder than any gravity shift. If I take him, Varric said, humanity gets a living archive. Proof. Knowledge beyond imagining. And Caelus IX dies, Mira replied. Quietly. Permanently. Varric looked back at the planet. And if you stay? Humanity never knows how close it came to losing something irreplaceable, she said. And this world gets a chance. He exhaled slowly. You're choosing the planet over your species. Mira shook her head. I'm choosing life, she said. The same way it chose us. The launch alarm sounded an hour later. The outpost was calm as the evacuation procedures began. No panic. No rushing footsteps. The planet seemed to understand what was happening. Corridors opened smoothly. Systems guided the remaining crew toward the shuttle bays. Mira did not move. She stood at the edge of the platform as Varric and the others boarded the final transport. The child remained silent in her arms, watching the motion with ancient calm. Varric stopped at the ramp. Last chance, he said. You can still come. Mira smiled sadly. Someone has to stay and teach him what it means to care, she said. And someone has to listen to a planet that's been silent for too long. Varric nodded once. No salute. No ceremony. The ramp closed. The engines ignited. As the outpost launched, Caelus IX reacted, not with fear, not with anger, but with release. The tremors softened. The lattice stabilized. The planet's systems adjusted to a smaller, more intimate presence. Honestly. Years passed. Not the kind measured by headlines or alarms, but the quiet kind, marked by slow rotations, subtle shifts, and patience. From orbit, Caelus IX no longer looked dead. The exploration vessel Helios Drift slid into position above the planet, its sensors awakening as the world filled the forward viewport. What the crew saw forced silence across the bridge. A thin atmosphere clung to the planet now. Not thick enough for breath. Not yet. But real. Present. Wisps of cloud moved slowly along the Terminator line, catching light from the aging red star. Atmospheric formation confirmed, the pilot said quietly, as if speaking too loudly might break something. Trace oxygen. Rising steadily. Heat signatures glowed across the surface, not random, not volcanic. Distributed. Balanced. It's regulating itself, one of the scientists whispered. Like a metabolism. No one argued. They had come expecting anomalies. They were witnessing recovery. The ship's long-range optics focused on the surface, zooming in across vast stone plains that once showed nothing but erosion and collapse. Now, the rock carried texture. Flow. Gentle curves shaped by forces that were no longer violent. Then someone noticed movement. Wait, the navigator said. There. Bottom quadrant. Enhancing. The image sharpened. A single human figure walked across the plains, her silhouette small against the enormity of the world. Beside her walked a child. They moved slowly, deliberately, their footsteps leaving faint impressions in the dust. As they walked, the ground beneath them warmed subtly, responding to their presence. The bridge fell completely silent. That's impossible, someone finally said. No, the captain replied softly. It's improbable. The sensors confirmed what the eyes struggled to accept. The planet's neural activity, once fragmented and dormant, was now coherent. Not aggressive. Not expanding outward. Simply, awake. Down on the surface, Mira stopped walking and tilted her head, feeling the familiar hum beneath her feet. The planet's rhythm had changed over the years. It no longer pulsed with pain or uncertainty. It was calm. Beside her, the child, no longer an infant, not fully a boy, looked up at the sky. His eyes reflected the distant glimmer of the ship overhead, though he did not wave. He understood, in his own way, what observation meant. They're watching again, Mira said gently. He nodded. They always do, he replied. His voice carried an echo, not louder, not strange, just layered. As if something older listened when he spoke. Mira smiled faintly. That's all right, she said. As long as they don't try to own you. The child knelt, pressing his palm to the stone. The ground warmed in response, subtle and alive. Somewhere deep below, ancient structures adjusted, aligning themselves with practiced ease. The planet breathed. Years ago, Mira had feared the silence. Feared the waiting. Feared the responsibility of staying behind when the rest of humanity left. Now, the silence felt different. It felt full. From orbit, the explorers recorded everything. Data streamed back to Earth, atmospheric readings, geothermal stabilization, neural coherence patterns that defied every existing planetary model. But no one spoke of colonization. No one suggested extraction. Some truths arrived too clearly to be misunderstood. This isn't a resource, the captain said quietly. It's a survivor. The crew watched as Mira and the child continued across the plains. Wherever they walked, the ground responded, not blooming suddenly, not erupting into life, but adjusting. Preparing. The future was being built at the pace it deserved. On the surface, Mira stopped near a ridge overlooking a vast basin. Thin mist gathered there now, pooling gently, catching the light. Not an ocean. Not yet. But a promise. She sat on the stone, the child beside her. "Do you remember the waiting?" she asked him. He nodded slowly. "I remember being tired," he said. "And hoping." Mira closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the ground rise into her palms. "You don't have to hurry anymore," she said. "No one here is leaving." The planet responded with a deep, steady pulse, contentment, not need. Above them, the Helios drift adjusted its orbit, careful to maintain distance. No drills. No probes. Just observation. The final report transmitted to Earth hours later was brief. Caelus IX is alive. Not hostile. Not exploitable. Do not interfere. Some on Earth would argue. Some would doubt. Some would dream of what could be taken. But others would remember the lesson. Life did not always arrive in ships. Sometimes, it chose to be born. On a world that should have remained silent forever, a planet had reached out, not with weapons, not with demands, but with trust. And someone had listened. Years later, as clouds thickened and warmth spread, Caelus IX continued its slow recovery. Not toward perfection. Toward balance. A living world. Not because life arrived. But because it chose to begin again.